My mother looked me dead in the eye at Thanksgiving dinner and said the vacation was for family without me. Then she tried to steal $6,500 from my bank account to pay for it. Have you ever been excluded from something you were expected to fund? Because what happened next flipped their entire trip upside down, and I need to tell you this story from the beginning. Hi, I'm Sofia Martinez. I'm 28 years old, and before we get into this, if you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe because trust me, this gets wild. And drop a comment below telling me how you would have handled this situation because I genuinely want to know. Now let me take you back to that Thanksgiving dinner. I live in San Francisco and do freelance graphic design. The kind of work where you learn to stay calm even when everything around you is messy. That's probably why I didn't react the way my family expected on Thanksgiving. The whole day had that familiar sugary feeling my mom loves to put on like a tablecloth. Warm lighting, loud football in the background, everyone talking over each other like we were close. I showed up trying to believe it could be normal for once. I'd even let myself get excited about the one thing we'd been circling around for weeks. The upcoming vacation. Felt safe to say out loud like a little peace offering. So during dinner, when the conversation drifted to time off and flights and who needed a break, I smiled and said, I can't wait for our vacation. I meant it. I meant us. My mom didn't hesitate. She laughed like I'd just served her the best punchline of the night, leaned forward and said, vacations for family without you. For a second I thought I misheard her because who says that at Thanksgiving in front of everyone like it's cute? But then my dad laughed, my brother laughed, my sister laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an uncomfortable one. The loud kind. The kind that makes you realize they've all already agreed on your place and it isn't at the table. I felt my chest go tight like my body was bracing for impact. But I kept my face smooth. I nodded once like she'd said something harmless. And I pushed my chair back with this calm I didn't feel. I didn't argue. I didn't beg for an explanation. I just smiled, grabbed my coat and left while they were still laughing. I sat in my car in the driveway for a minute, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the glow of the dining room window, listening to the muffled sound of them having a great time without me. I told myself, fine. If they want a vacation without me, they can have it. What I didn't know yet was that they didn't just want me gone. They wanted my money gone too. And they were about to prove it in the most brazen way possible. So, if you've ever been laughed out of your own family like you were an extra they didn't need anymore, stay with me because a week after that dinner, my phone lit up with an alert that turned my stomach, and I made one decision that flipped their perfect little vacation upside down. When I got back to my apartment in San Francisco, I didn't do the dramatic thing people expect. I didn't throw my phone across the room or cry into a pillow. I took a shower, put on clean pajamas and sat on the edge of my bed with that hollow, buzzing feeling you get after something humiliating happens and you can't stop replaying it. Vacations for family without you. She'd said it like I was a stray dog begging at the door. And the worst part was how easily everyone laughed like they'd been waiting for permission to treat me that way. I'd been the dependable one for years. Not the most loved, not the most celebrated, just the most useful. I was the one who always had steady income. Even when my brother was between jobs again or when my sister was spending like her wedding was sponsored by someone else's bank account, I was the one who covered small gaps that never stayed small. A few hundred for flights, a few hundred for upgrades. We'll pay you back. That somehow turned into, you're doing so well you'll be fine. I didn't even realize how often I'd been trained to swallow it until that Thanksgiving laugh snapped something in me. I told myself I wasn't going to chase them. I wasn't going to call my mom and ask what she meant because I already knew what she meant. She meant I didn't count unless I was paying. So, I did the only thing that actually changes outcomes. I got practical. Around midnight, I opened my banking app and started looking at every account I had, including one I barely thought about anymore. An old checking account from when I was in college. Back then, my mom had helped me set it up. And at the time, it felt normal to let her have access just in case. Over the years I stopped using it as my main account, but I still kept money in there as a cushion and emergency fund and honestly a safety net for them. I'd tell myself it was for emergencies like car trouble or medical stuff. In reality, it was for whatever crisis my family declared urgent enough to become my responsibility. Seeing that account again made my stomach twist because I realized something that should have been obvious. If they could laugh and say a vacation was without me, they could also decide they were entitled to whatever I had. I didn't shut it down right away because I didn't want to tip them off. Instead, I quietly moved most of the balance into my personal account, the one only I controlled. and I turned on every alert setting I could find. Any withdrawal, any transfer, any attempt over a certain amount, I wanted to know instantly. Then I went into my group chat with my family, not to argue, just to see what they were doing. It was like I'd never existed. Photos of resorts, links to activities, little jokes about matching outfits. My mom typing things like, "Can't wait for our family trip," with a heart emoji. My sister chimed in about a luau. My brother joked about needing a bigger suitcase. No one asked me anything. No one even pretended it was awkward. That's when the hurt shifted into something clearer and colder. They weren't confused about me. They were comfortable without me. And that meant I needed to get comfortable protecting myself, even if it made me the villain in their story. I put my phone down, stared at the ceiling, and made a quiet promise to myself. I was done paying for people who enjoyed excluding me. If they wanted without Sofia, I was going to give it to them in a way they couldn't ignore. The next week moved fast in that strange way it does when you're pretending you're fine, but your body knows you're not. I buried myself in work, took client calls, revised a brand deck 3 times because I couldn't focus, and told myself I was being productive when really I was just trying not to think about my mom's voice saying, "Without you," like it was nothing. Every couple of days Carmen called. I didn't answer. She'd leave these short voicemails in that sugary tone she uses when she wants something but doesn't want to admit it. "Hey sweetheart. Call me back when you can. Miss you. Love you." Not once did she mention Thanksgiving. Not once did she say, "I'm sorry." It was like the whole moment never happened and I was supposed to swallow it like I always had. Meanwhile, the family group chat stayed active like a show I wasn't invited to but was still expected to sponsor. Valeria kept dropping screenshots of itineraries and resort confirmations. Diego sent a picture of sunglasses on a kitchen counter with the caption, "Vacation mode." My dad reacted with thumbs-up emojis like he was proud of the plan and not at all embarrassed by the fact that his own daughter had been laughed out of the room. And the part that got under my skin wasn't even the trip itself. It was how normal they made it. No one asked me if I was okay. No one even pretended it was awkward. They acted like I didn't exist. And I hated myself a little for realizing I'd spent years training them that I could be ignored as long as I was useful. I kept thinking about that old checking account, the one I'd quietly moved most of the money out of and set alerts on, the one I hadn't closed yet because I didn't want to tip them off. I told myself I was being cautious, but deep down I was also watching. I wanted to see what they would do when they thought I wasn't paying attention. Then, exactly 1 week after Thanksgiving on a Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting at my desk editing a set of brand guidelines when my phone buzzed with a notification that turned my stomach cold. Banking alert. Withdrawal request pending. Amount, $6,500. For a second I just stared at the screen like my brain refused to accept it. $6,500 isn't a mistake. It isn't a forgotten subscription. It's deliberate. It's a number you choose when you're trying to cover something big. Quickly I opened the app and saw it was tied to that old account, the one from college. The alert listed a branch location near my parents' neighborhood in Los Angeles. My heart started pounding but my hands stayed steady, which surprised me. I expected panic. Instead I felt this sharp, clean clarity, like a line had finally been crossed, so obviously there was no room left for denial. I didn't call my mom. I didn't text the group chat. I called the bank. I told the representative I needed to verify an in-person withdrawal request immediately. She asked security questions, then put me on hold. When she came back, her voice shifted into that careful customer service tone people use when family is involved and things are about to get ugly. She said someone listed as an account holder was attempting a teller withdrawal. Listed as an account holder. That phrase hit like a slap because it meant my mom wasn't sneaking. He thought she was entitled. I asked who it was and she said she couldn't give me the name for privacy reasons but confirmed it was the secondary holder on the account. I didn't need the name. I already knew. Carmen. I sat back in my chair and felt something inside me go very still. So this was the plan. They didn't just want a vacation without me. They wanted a vacation paid for by me while laughing about how I wasn't family enough to come along. And suddenly every little detail from the past week clicked into place. Valeria's messages about final confirmations, Diego's jokes about upgrades, my mom's upbeat tone on voicemail like she was counting down to something. Even a comment my dad had made in the chat a few days earlier. Something like, "This trip will be so good for all of us," with the word, all, doing a lot of work when I wasn't included. I kept the bank rep on the line and asked what exactly was happening. She explained that because it was a joint account, the other holder could legally withdraw funds unless the account was closed or I removed myself. She said the request was currently pending because it was over a certain amount and required additional verification at the branch. And that was when I realized how bold it really was. My mom didn't try to transfer a few hundred. She walked into a bank, stood at a teller window and asked for $6,500 like it was her right, like she wasn't about to use my money to fund a trip I'd been mocked out of. My face felt hot. Not from embarrassment this time but from anger. The kind of anger that shows you the truth without softening it. Diego had been between jobs again, which meant he probably had little or nothing to contribute. Valeria had been spiraling about wedding expenses for months. Talking about deposits and alterations and venues like the word budget was offensive. And my parents, who care more about appearances than honesty, had likely promised a nicer vacation than they could afford because they assumed I would do what I always did. Quietly cover the gap so everyone could keep smiling. $6,500 sounded exactly like a final payment. The kind of number you owe when you've already put down deposits and you need to lock in the reservation. Maybe upgrade to a suite, add a snorkeling tour, pay for the luau package, all the extras that make it look perfect online. And they'd probably told themselves it wasn't stealing because they were going to pay me back someday maybe. The way they always said they would, while still treating me like I didn't belong, while still calling it a joke. As I was processing all of that, my phone buzzed again, this time with a new message in the family chat. Valeria wrote, "We're almost all set, just waiting on one last payment to go through." Then Carmen replied with a smiley face and said, "Don't worry, I'm handling it right now." Handling it? With my money. After telling me I wasn't family. My throat tightened and I felt this brief ugly urge to call her and scream, but I didn't. I forced my voice to stay calm and I asked the bank rep, "What is the fastest way to stop this today?" She told me the withdrawal could be declined if I closed the account immediately. I looked at the pending request on my screen like it was a blinking warning light and I felt something settle in me. Not fear. Decision. I said, "Close it right now. I want it closed permanently and I want new accounts opened under my name only." The rep confirmed what that meant, that no one else would have access, that any attempt would fail. And I told her to do it anyway because in that moment, I understood something that took me too long to learn. My family wasn't confused about boundaries. They just didn't like mine. And if I didn't end it cleanly right then, they would keep trying until they got what they wanted. She didn't argue. The bank representative's voice stayed calm, almost gentle, like she could hear the difference between a normal account issue and someone realizing their own mother was trying to take advantage of them. She started explaining what closing the account would mean, how it would immediately stop all pending activity, how any card linked to it would be deactivated, and how the other account holder would lose access the second the closure was processed. I told her to do it anyway. Then I asked her to repeat it back to me just to make sure there was zero wiggle room. Close the account permanently. Issue me new cards under my name only, and note that this withdrawal was not authorized by me. She confirmed, asked a few more security questions, and I listened to the clicking of her keyboard like it was the sound of a door locking. While she worked, I stared at the pending withdrawal on my screen and felt something I didn't expect. Not panic, but relief. It was like my body had been waiting years for permission to stop being the safety net. When she finally said, "Okay, Miss Martinez, the account is now closed," I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Less than a minute later, the alert updated. Withdrawal declined. Request cancelled. My stomach still churned, but my hands were steady. Then my phone started vibrating like it was possessed. Carmen calling again. Dad calling. Diego, Valeria, one after another, like someone had set off an alarm in their living room, and they all knew exactly who had pulled the plug. I didn't pick up. I didn't owe them my immediate reaction. I opened the family group chat instead because if they were going to treat me like a bank, then they could deal with me the way banks deal with people. In writing, with receipts. I took a screenshot of the declined withdrawal, making sure the amount and the status were visible, and I sent it to the chat. No dramatic paragraph, no explanation, just the image and one sentence. Pay without me. It was short, cold, and accurate. And that was exactly why it hit. For a few seconds the chat went silent. No typing bubbles, nothing, like they had to process the fact that I'd actually done it. Then the bubbles popped up one by one, appearing, disappearing, reappearing. Valeria was first. "Hannah, what is wrong with you?" Diego followed. Are you serious right now? My dad wrote, pick up the phone. And then Carmen, call me now. Not, please. Not, can we talk? Now. Like I was still 12 years old and she could order me back into line. I stared at her message and felt that old instinct to explain myself, to justify why I was allowed to be upset, to prove I wasn't crazy. Then I remembered Thanksgiving. How she didn't justify. How she didn't soften it. She said without you and let them laugh. So I matched her energy. I didn't respond. I set my phone face down on my desk and finished the work I was doing because I refused to let their chaos take over my day. I sent my client the final files, answered a couple emails, and only then did I flip my phone back over. There were voicemails stacked like bricks. In the first one, Carmen was crying, heavy and theatrical like she was performing for an audience. In the next one she was furious, her voice tight, accusing me of humiliating her. Then she swung back to sweet again, telling me we could fix this, like the only thing broken was their payment plan. I didn't listen to every second. I didn't need to. I knew the pattern. They would call me ungrateful. They would say it was just a temporary loan. They would say family helps family. They would ignore the part where they decided I wasn't family when it came to a seat on the plane. So, I moved into protection mode the way I do with work projects. Step by step. No emotion wasted. I updated every autopay that had ever been tied to that old account just in case something bounced. I made sure my savings were in an account only I controlled. I turned on two-factor authentication everywhere. I froze my credit not because I thought they were criminals, but because desperation makes people do stupid things, and Carmen had already proven she felt entitled to my resources. I also emailed myself a copy of all screenshots so they couldn't disappear if something happened to my phone. Then I did something that felt small but mattered. I left my apartment. I went outside. I took a long walk through Golden Gate Park, letting the cold air cut through the adrenaline. I passed joggers and dog walkers and couples holding hands, normal people living normal lives. And it reminded me that my family's drama wasn't the center of the world unless I let it be. And as I walked, the humiliation I'd carried since Thanksgiving finally started to lift. It wasn't because they suddenly respected me. It was because I stopped asking them to. I stopped negotiating for basic decency. I stopped paying for the privilege of being tolerated. Halfway through the park, I opened a travel app and booked a solo trip for the exact same week they were supposed to leave. Not Hawaii, somewhere quiet, somewhere I wouldn't have to watch my back or fight for a seat at the table. Lake Tahoe. I picked a simple cabin close to the water and hit confirm before I could talk myself out of it. For years, I told myself I couldn't waste money on things like that because I needed to be responsible because my family might need help. But they had already shown me what they did with my responsibility. They used it. They depended on it. And when I stopped giving it, they called me dramatic. When I got home, my phone was still blowing up. But I finally sent one more message into the group chat. Short and final. You said the vacation was without me. So is the payment. Do not come to my apartment. Then I put my phone on silent again and sat down at my kitchen table with my coffee, feeling that strange mix of sadness and strength that comes when you choose yourself for the first time because I knew the next move wouldn't be a polite conversation. It would be a tantrum. And I was done managing their tantrums. The next morning my phone looked like a crime scene. 37 missed calls, a wall of texts, voicemails stacked so high I didn't even want to listen because I already knew what was in them. The same cycle my family always ran when they didn't get their way. First shock, then tears, then anger, then blame, then the final move. Trying to make you feel guilty for reacting to what they did. I made coffee, opened my laptop and tried to start my day like normal. But the second I sat down a new call came through. I let it ring. Then Mom again, then Valeria, then Diego. It was like they were taking turns pounding on a door they suddenly realized they needed open. I finally checked the group chat not because I wanted to engage but because I wanted everything in writing. My mom had sent a long message overnight. Sofia, this is a huge misunderstanding. I was just trying to take care of the final payment for the trip. We were going to pay you back as soon as we got home. You know your brother is going through a hard time and Valeria has wedding expenses. You didn't have to do this in such a dramatic way. I stared at that for a full minute. He called stealing dramatic. Then my dad followed up with a message that made my jaw clench. You embarrassed your mother. You made us look bad. That money was for the family. You're being selfish and petty over a joke. A joke. That word again. Like it was all harmless and I was the problem for not laughing. Diego jumped in next and his tone was pure frustration. I can't believe you. We already booked everything. Do you know how much we're going to lose if this doesn't go through? Valeria responded with something even more ridiculous. Sofia, please. This is ruining everything. I've been planning this and my stress is already so high. Just unlock it and we'll talk later. Not, I'm sorry. Not, we were wrong. Just unlock it like I was a keypad, not a person. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I took screenshots. Every message, every line where they admitted they expected to use my money. Because if this escalated and I could feel it was going to, I wanted proof. By lunchtime, the guilt tactics turned into rage. My dad texted again. If you don't fix this today, don't expect us to be there for you when you need us. I almost laughed out loud in my apartment because the irony was so thick it could have been sliced. Be there for me. When had they ever been there for me without putting a price tag on it? Then my mom left a voicemail that was pure performance. Her voice was shaky and loud like she wanted anyone around her to hear how wounded she was. Sofia, I can't believe you would do this to your own mother after everything I've done for you. You are breaking my heart. Call me back right now. We can fix this. We can fix this. Like the problem was the payment, not the betrayal. Later that afternoon, a new message appeared in the group chat from Valeria that made my stomach drop in a different way. We're coming to talk in person. You can't ignore us forever. I read it twice, hoping I was overreacting. Then Diego replied, good. She needs to understand this isn't how family works. And my dad added, we'll be there tonight. For a second, I felt that old fear, the one I hadn't admitted to myself in years. The fear of confrontation. The fear of being ganged up on in a room where I'm the only one expected to stay polite. But that fear lasted maybe 10 seconds before it turned into something else. Anger, yes, but also resolve. I typed one message back. Do not come to my apartment. If you show up, I will not open the door. Then I stopped responding. I went to the hardware store and bought a small door camera and installed it that evening, not because I thought they were going to break in, but because I wanted a record. I wanted facts, not their version of events. Around 10 p.m. the camera notification popped up. Motion detected. My heart jumped even though I expected it. I opened the app and saw them in the hallway outside my door. My mom in her coat, hair perfect, eyes already set in that tight expression she wears when she's about to play the victim. My dad standing behind her with his arms crossed like a security guard. Diego pacing with his phone in his hand, jaw tight. Valeria looking irritated like I was inconveniencing her. My mom knocked once, then twice, then started pounding. Sofia, open the door. We need to talk. My dad leaned in and said, stop acting like a child. Diego muttered something I couldn't hear, but I saw Valeria roll her eyes. The pounding got louder. I stayed quiet. I didn't move. I stood on the other side of the door, one hand on the lock, listening to my own breathing. My mom switched tactics fast. Sofia, sweetheart, please just let us in. We're worried about you. That made me almost sick. Worried about me. They were worried about the resort confirmation and the vacation photos they wanted to post. They weren't worried about the way they laughed at me like I didn't belong. Then my dad raised his voice. If you don't open this door right now, you're making a huge mistake. You're tearing this family apart. Diego added, you're really going to do this over nothing? And Valeria said, I swear you're so dramatic. That word again. Dramatic. Like blocking someone from draining your money was an emotional outburst instead of a boundary. They kept knocking for another 10 minutes, switching between pleading and threatening, until finally my neighbor's door opened down the hall. I heard someone ask if everything was okay. My mom instantly softened her voice, said something like, oh yes. Sorry, family issue. My dad stepped back embarrassed. Diego looked around like he suddenly remembered we weren't in their house where they control the narrative. Then my mom did one last thing before leaving that told me everything about who she was. She leaned close to the door and said quietly so only I would hear it. Fine. If you want to play like this, don't expect to be part of this family again. And then they walked away. I stood there in silence after they left. Not shaking, not crying, just feeling this strange calm because for the first time they had finally said the truth out loud. In their world, family wasn't love. Family was obedience. And I had just stopped obeying. The next day was quieter on my end because I kept my phone on silent, but I could feel the storm building anyway, like the air before an earthquake. Around noon, my friend Isabella texted me. Not in a nosy way, more like she was checking if I was okay. She said, hey, are you all right? I just saw something your mom posted. That was how I found out Carmen had taken the fight public. I opened Facebook and there it was, a long post written like a devotional, vague enough to sound innocent, specific enough for anyone who knew us to connect the dots. She talked about how some children forget their parents sacrificed everything, how gratitude is disappearing, how pride destroys families, how she was heartbroken that someone could turn their back on the people who raised them. No names, no details, just a carefully crafted victim story designed to make me look cold without giving anyone the truth. The comments were exactly what she wanted. People saying things like, sending love. You did your best. Kids these days. Family is everything. A few distant relatives chimed in too. The ones who only show up online but still think they have a vote in your life. My first instinct was to type a paragraph and defend myself, to explain the withdrawal attempt, to tell them what was said at Thanksgiving. Then I stopped because that is what she wanted. She wanted me to spiral in public so she could call me unstable and dramatic again. So instead of arguing, I gathered evidence. I created a folder on my laptop and dropped everything in it. Screenshots of the group chat, the message where Valeria said they were waiting on one last payment, my mom saying she was handling it, the bank alert showing the $6,500 withdrawal attempt, and the follow-up decline after I closed the account. I wrote down the timeline in plain language. Date, time, what happened, what was said. Then I called a lawyer not because I wanted to sue my family, but because I wanted one thing very clearly established. My money was not theirs and my home was not a place they could storm into when they felt entitled. The lawyer listened, asked a few questions and told me the smartest move was documentation and a formal boundary. So we drafted a letter, a cease and desist, stating that they were not to contact me through third parties, not to come to my residence again, and not to attempt any access to my financial accounts, credit, or personal information. It also made it clear that any continued harassment would be recorded and could be used to support a protective order if necessary. Seeing it in legal language did something to me. It made the situation real in a way my mom could not laugh off. That afternoon I sent the letter to my parents by certified mail and emailed a copy so they could not claim they never got it. Then I did something else that felt sad but necessary. I called the non-emergency line in my neighborhood and asked about documenting repeated unwanted visits. They told me I could file an informational report if they returned. I did not want police drama. I just wanted a paper trail. Later that evening my phone buzzed with messages from numbers I did not recognize. All variations of the same theme. People my mom had recruited. An aunt I barely speak to texting, "Your mother is devastated. Call her." A cousin saying, "Whatever is happening, you only have one family." A family friend writing, "Carmen says you are going through something. Let us help." I blocked each one without responding. Not because I hate them but because I know how this works. If I answer one it becomes a debate. And debates are where my family rewrites history until you feel guilty for facts. The only person I replied to was Isabella. And I kept it simple. They tried to take money from an account they should not have touched. I handled it. I am safe. Thanks for checking on me. Then I took one controlled step that I knew would end the whisper campaign without me screaming. I sent a short message to a small group of relatives I actually trust, the ones who have been kind to me over the years and do not thrive on drama. I did not insult anyone. I did not rant. I attached 3 screenshots and one sentence. Here's what happened. I am setting boundaries and I am not discussing this further. That was it. No back and forth, no performance, just proof. Within an hour the tone shifted. A couple of those relatives wrote back privately saying they were sorry, saying they had no idea, saying they understood why I did what I did. One of them told me quietly that Carmen was already spinning a new version, claiming she was simply moving money for safekeeping. That almost made me laugh because safekeeping is what you call it when you think the person you stole from will stay quiet. After that, Carmen escalated again. She left me a voicemail that was less tears and more rage. She said she could not believe I involved a lawyer. She said I was humiliating the family. She said I was destroying my father. She said I was ungrateful. Then she said something that made my skin go cold. She said, "You know we have your information. Do not make this worse." It was vague but it landed like a threat. I forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer and tightened everything. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I changed every password. I set up 2-factor authentication on everything. And I made sure my new bank account could not be accessed by anyone but me. I also told my building manager that no one was allowed to be let up to my unit without my permission. It sounds extreme until you have a family that thinks boundaries are an insult. The weird part is that once I stopped engaging, my life started to feel bigger again. I took on a new client who needed a full rebrand. The kind of project that actually excites me. I went to a local art market on Saturday and talked to other designers, people who build things instead of tearing people down. I signed up for a community cooking class because I realized I had spent years saving my energy for my family and I wanted to spend it on myself for once. That is where I met a guy named Marcus. Not a perfect rom-com moment, just a normal, kind conversation while we tried not to burn our food. It was simple and it felt good. Meanwhile, my family was stuck in their own mess. They could not bully the bank. They could not show up at my door and force me to comply. They could only do what they always do when control slips away. They turned on each other. Valeria blamed Diego for not having money. Diego blamed Dad for promising a trip they could not afford. Dad blamed Mom for saying what she said at Thanksgiving. And Mom blamed me for all of it because in her mind, consequences are always someone else's fault. I did not need to hear the details to know it was happening. I could feel it in the sudden gaps, the silence after the tantrum, the way their threats stopped working once I stopped reacting. By the time my Lake Tahoe confirmation email landed in my inbox, I realized something that made me feel almost peaceful. They did not miss me. They missed what they could take from me. And the second I accepted that truth, cutting them off stopped feeling like punishment. Started feeling like freedom. By the time their vacation week arrived, I didn't have to imagine what was happening. I knew because my mom couldn't resist leaving little breadcrumbs like she still controlled the story. She posted less. He stopped bragging. The countdown to Maui energy disappeared overnight. Then a distant aunt messaged me one sentence that told me everything without trying to be dramatic. They canceled the trip. I stared at that for a second and instead of feeling guilty, I felt this quiet sense of balance like the universe had finally forced them to pay their own bill. Later, I heard the details through the same family grapevine that had been so eager to scold me. They lost deposits. The resort kept part of the booking because it was too close to the date. Flights got hit with change fees. Tours were non-refundable. The exact numbers didn't even matter as much as the reality behind them. They had planned a lifestyle they couldn't afford because they were counting on my silence. And when my silence stopped being permission, their perfect family vacation collapsed. The best part wasn't that they lost money. It was that they lost the illusion that they could treat me like nothing and still collect from me like clockwork. My dad emailed me 2 days after the cancellation. Not a text, not a phone call, an email like he knew he needed to put his words in a place where he couldn't interrupt me or raise his voice. He wrote that he was sorry for how Thanksgiving went. He said he didn't handle it right, that he should have stopped the joke, that he should have called me after, that he let things get out of control. He didn't blame my mom, but I could read the space between his sentences. He was tired. He was embarrassed. He was trying to repair something without actually standing up to the person who broke it. I read it once, then again, and I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because I finally understood something I used to avoid. An apology that comes after consequences is not always about remorse. Sometimes it's just about wanting the discomfort to end. And I wasn't responsible for easing their discomfort anymore. That same week, while they were dealing with fees and blame and the awkward silence of a trip that never happened, I drove to Lake Tahoe alone. I didn't post about it. I didn't do it to show them anything. I did it because I wanted a week where my nervous system could breathe. The first morning I woke up there, the air was so cold it felt sharp in my lungs. And the lake looked unreal, like glass under a pale sky. I grabbed coffee, took a slow walk, and listened to snow crunch under my boots. No shouting, no guilt, no group chat, no watching my words so someone else wouldn't explode. Just quiet. Just me. I realized I had spent years confusing peace with abandonment. I thought if I wasn't holding my family together, I was failing. But standing there by the lake, watching the sunrise spill over the mountains, it hit me that I wasn't the glue. I was the cushion. I was what made their bad choices feel softer. And the second I removed myself, they had to feel the impact of their own behavior. That is the part people don't talk about. Boundaries don't just protect you. They expose what other people were depending on you to tolerate. When you stop tolerating it, they call you selfish, dramatic, cold. Not because you changed, but because the arrangement changed. You stopped being easy to use. When I got back to San Francisco, my life didn't magically become perfect, but it became honest. My money stayed mine. My time stayed mine. My peace stayed mine. I kept the credit freeze in place. I kept the lawyer's letter on file. I kept the door camera. I didn't do any of that out of paranoia. I did it because I learned that love without respect is just control wearing a softer name. And family isn't supposed to require you to be smaller so everyone else can feel bigger. If you're listening to this and you've ever been told you're not really family unless you're paying, unless you're obeying, unless you're staying quiet, hear me clearly. You are not cruel for protecting yourself. You are not ungrateful for saying no. You are not dramatic for refusing to be drained. The core lesson I learned is simple, but it changed everything. Access is earned, even for parents, especially for parents. Money is not love. Silence is not consent. And the moment someone laughs while pushing you out of the room, you are allowed to close the door behind you and choose a life where you are not a punchline. In the end, my mom got exactly what she asked for at Thanksgiving. A vacation without me. And for the first time in my life, that finally included my wallet, my energy, and my future. So that's my story. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? How did you handle it? Let me know below and I'll see you in the next one.